Welcome back to Tiff Reads Books, where I read books and then I talk to you about them. I'm Tiff, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the Sworn Soldier series, which is currently sitting right behind me and is a duology at the moment. So I just finished was Feasts at Night earlier this week, last week, something like that. I just finished this, and I did really enjoy it. So I thought we would talk about the series as a whole so far and what I've learned about where it's going to go. So I just did a brief Google before I started this. Where can I put this that's out of the way? So, Sworn Soldier series. This is the T. Kingfisher novella series. I say the, but T. Kingfisher does a ton of stuff. So this is a horror novella series that has plans for future books and is currently a duology. It started last year, 2022 maybe? Let me look, because I didn't check dates. It started in 2022 with What Moves the Dead. First off, I want to say these covers are by Christina Mrazek, who does amazingly dark art like this. And I recommend you check her out. If you like this type of art too, you should also check out Lauren Marks, who I'll put up a screenshot of her Instagram, and also Caitlin Hackett. They do similar styles of stuff. Hooky Duke also does some really cool stuff too, so I'll put their Instagrams up because I love seeing art like this. So if you're like me and you love this art, check out these artists, maybe support them, buy a print or something, because what they do is really cool. So I read this. Let's start off with saying, in all honesty, I read this last year. Do I remember all the details? Absolutely not. Do I remember the vibes? Yes, I do. Do I remember how I felt about it at the end? Yes, I do. So let's talk about this first. If you have not read this, this was huge last year and the year before. A ton of people were talking about it. I saw it all over the place, and I think this cover is part of what drew people to it, because it just draws you in. I mean, look. Can we focus? We can focus. Look at this cover. And then when you open it up, so I found this used, just saying. And I'm very excited. I paid $1 for this. These end papers are actually illustrated by T. Kingfisher herself. And apparently she was an illustrator for a long time before she started publishing books. So we have these, they're the same front and back, but they're absolutely stunning, Tim Burton-y type-esque, and I love them. So the other thing about this is it is a Fall of the House of Usher retelling. Have I read The Fall of the House of Usher? No. Do I have access to it right now? Yes. Should I have read it before I filmed this? Absolutely. Did I? No. Also, have I watched the show? I have not, but I plan to. So we're gonna just talk about this as if it's its own piece of media, because it is. After T. Kingfisher wrote this, I was really amused by the author's note at the end where she was like, of course I did this, and then Sylvia Moreno Garcia, who is amazing, did this, but better. So I read Mexican Gothic as well, and I think if you liked this, you should read that, and if you like that, you should also read this. Very different stories, so both very Gothic. This is a Gothic story. This is about a house and the people in it, and I mean, that's pretty much. So, okay, let me give you the non-spoilery review of this and this first, and my thoughts, and then we'll go into a little bit of spoilers. And I'm gonna try and keep this short, but we all know I'm a wordy bitch, so I'm gonna try my best to get some brevity today. So, this story follows Alex Easton, who is a sworn soldier, and in the world that Alex comes from, a sworn soldier kind of becomes their own gender. They're non-binary. Alex identifies that way regardless of being a sworn soldier or not. They go by the pronouns ka and kan. So that is the point of view that we are starting this off with. The sworn soldier, Alex, has been in some pretty nasty wars. And what I learned from this book is that T. Kingfisher actually did some research on wars in the late 1800s between Serbia and the Balkans. And that's the type of wars that Alex was in. And Alex has some pretty severe PTSD from that. So Alex has been back from the war and has been invited to go visit Ka's friend at the manor, whose house name I cannot remember, their friends' names. Okay, so on arrival, the sister of the brother-sister duo that lives in the house is very, very ill, and nobody can quite figure out why. And that's the mystery, essentially. There is something in the house that is making her very sick, and it is not quite normal. It is maybe supernatural, or maybe it's not. It's hard to say. So while Alex is out riding around on Hob, their amazing horse that I absolutely love their relationship with, T. Kingfisher does a great job in here of giving Hob a personality and actually making him a character in the story. And I really, really love that. If you've read other T. Kingfisher books, you've seen T. Kingfisher do a really good job with giving animals a personality within the story. All the animal companions have their own kind of personal touch on the story. So Hob and Alex end up meeting Miss Potter, who is, she's a mycologist who is not allowed in the British Royal Society for research because she's a woman, which is very Beatrix Potter-esque, and I kind of liked that a lot. She becomes really integral in the story and in figuring out what is happening with the friend of Alex, who is incredibly ill. And what goes down ends up being solved by Alex and this doctor character and Angus, who is Alex's man, like footman type man that has been in Alex's life forever. And then Miss Potter. They all kind of solve the mystery together, and they take down the issue together as a team. And then post that, we move into What Feasts at Night. And now we have Alex and Angus have invited Miss Potter to visit Alex's hunting lodge in Galatia or Galatia. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it because it's a made-up place. Where Alex inherited this hunting lodge from their father, and the father hadn't been there in a long time, and neither had Alex. So Alex and Angus had hired this guy called Codrin to take care of the house, and when they arrive, Codrin is missing, and we aren't quite sure exactly what happened. When we do find out in the very couple of pages that Codrin has passed away, has passed away, nobody in the town will talk about it to Alex or Angus, and we aren't sure why. Nobody wants to come replace him in the house as a caretaker, and also Angus is like, oh, because Miss Potter is British, we need to have probably actually a woman so that there's a sense of propriety. And so they get this old widow, and she brings her grandson, who is like a late teenager from what I can tell, and he does all like the heavy duty stuff, the chopping the wood, the lifting, and all that type of stuff. He's just kind of like an extra hand while they're there. And something starts happening to both Alex and this young man whose name has escaped me, even though I just recently read this. So we have another mystery. The thing that I did not like as much about this one is that it's really mainly Alex solving the mystery and dealing with the issue that's occurring. The other characters, as much as it was good to see Angus and Miss Potter and their little like relationship that they kind of had, it was very brief, very much in the background, and they weren't really a part of the story. They could have not even been there and it would have been fine. So that's kind of the review I had. This one was very spooky, very eerie, did a really good job with tension, and I struggled with, is this a 4.5 or is this a 5? And I settled on a 4.5 because I was like, if I have to ask if it's a 5, it's not a 5. It's not. I have yet to have a 5-star T. Kingfisher. I think they've all been 4.5s at the very highest. So I'm hoping that T. Kingfisher gives me a 5 soon. This one was a solid 4 because the tension was not there. The eeriness was not there. But what this did do was talk about PTSD very, very well. I enjoyed that conversation. We did a really good job of setting up what type of country, world Galatia is, and we got a lot of information on the background of it. But these two felt like different books. They felt like they could exist as standalone set in the same world. I wouldn't necessarily call this a sequel. So now, should you still read them? Yes. They're both gothic. They're both still gothic. They still have that vibe. This is more of a dark fantasy, a supernatural type thing, and this is more of a gothic horror. This has less of the horror elements to it, I believe. There is, at least from my perspective, because it didn't set up the tension and the suspense that I think horrors need to have. I don't think a horror is, this is a personal opinion, is something that just is bloody and gory, because I read a lot of fantasies that are bloody and gory. You can't tell me that Game of Thrones is not bloody and gory, but you also can't tell me that Game of Thrones is a horror. And because there's no, like, the purpose of that imagery is different. I didn't have, like, as much of a sense of fear or concern for the characters in here as I did in here. And I think the tones of the book are both very different. This definitely has a gothic horror tone to it. This has a little lighter tone to it than this one. So let's get into some spoilers, just brief spoilers, because these are novellas. There's not a whole lot to talk about. So in What Moves the Dead, the horror element is these mushrooms that have kind of like a mind of their own, and essentially what they've done to this poor woman is invaded her body, and they are puppeting her body. She is the mushrooms, and mushrooms spread. So her goal as a mushroom is to get everyone else to become a mushroom. And the interesting thing with this for me was it had some kind of elements of like Dracula, like where they're all kind of standing over the body trying to figure out what to do with it. Was kind of like, I was like, oh, that's kind of like a Dracula moment. It was interesting. So there's a lot more elements coming out of that. There was like this thing about like a glowing lake and where the mushrooms were and everything. And Miss Potter actually had a really big role in figuring out that it was the mushrooms. And I love having an older woman who is like essential to the plot because of her knowledge. I liked that aspect a lot. This one, she was only kind of there as a caretaker. Like, she didn't really provide a lot of information. She was good at getting information of other characters because she had conversations with them and asked them things, and because she's a foreigner, they were more open with her than they would be with Angus and Alex. So she was kind of there for that reason, where it would have just been nice to have maybe Alex have some character growth, like discuss things with people, try to ask people questions and stuff, instead of just this having it be Miss Potter. So the thing in this one is essentially we have a nightmare, which is why the horse on the cover is like falling apart. There is a scene specifically too where in a dream Alex touches the horses and their like skin like melts away. That was kind of gruesome, but very quick. It was maybe a half a paragraph, and I didn't really feel the like anxiety about it that I probably was supposed to feel. And that's again one of the reasons where I'm like, eh. So the nightmare type creature is, if you've seen like the painting, which I think I've put up in another video, of like a monster, a demon sitting on a woman's chest, and it's like sits on your chest and like steals your breath. It's like the thought around it modernly is that it's someone's depiction of sleep paralysis, and that's kind of what this is, except for that it gives you tuberculosis. Essentially, it's like it's the non-supernatural explanation is tuberculosis and fever dreams. And so in here though, we have it be a woman who was murdered and buried in unconsecrated ground, and then she started haunting the hunting lodge. We never really get a lot of like why she was murdered or who murdered her and all that. We get an explanation at the end that it's because, you know, poor people and records in the 1800s, right? Makes sense. And Alex is like, oh, you know, true stories aren't wrapped up nicely. This isn't a true story, this is a book. Wrap it up nicely for me. Or give me something, right? Give me something. I mean, you don't have to, but I kind of wanted something just because this felt like it was so not a lot that I needed a little bit of something. So words, where was I at? So the reason there are moths, again, this is drawn by T. Kingfisher as well. The reason there are moths on the end papers here is, and the cover, is because this woman can turn into a moth or a wolf, I think, like a werewolfy type thing. I think a wolf, because there's a little bit about werewolves in here that I was kind of like, okay, are we going to do something with this? And then we didn't do anything with it. And it just was kind of a letdown in a lot of places. But the story itself was, to me, still a 4. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of good, like, fun with it. But as a sequel, it was not needed. And it's very weird to be like, I liked this book, but I would be fine if it didn't exist. It's an odd feeling. Okay, so now let's go back to non-spoilery thoughts. My non-spoilery thoughts are, as a series, if this continues to be a Monster of the Week type series, I will continue to read it because I enjoy that type of thing. I don't need every book I read to be a 5, right? I've been reading the Mercedes Thompson series. They're like 3.5s to 4s, and I'm perfectly happy with them because they are a great palate cleanser. They're super easy to read. They're super simple. And having a novella series like this is great for that. Great for when you're in a little bit of a book slump, or you're not quite sure what to read, or you want to be able to finish a book in a day or two, because while a lot of people could finish 140 pages in a day, I usually can't. I don't have the time, I don't have the patience, and I don't have the focus most of the time to finish 140 pages in a day. I'm very bad at that. So these are a good thing if you want to feel accomplished that you finished a book in a couple of days. And for that reason, I love them. I also think that I like T. Kingfisher's sense of horror, because while there will be this tension and the suspense, there's this thread of humor running through it. And it is kind of a sarcastic type of humor. And I think it doesn't work for some people, but for some people like me, it really, really works. I really like T. Kingfisher's sense of humor. It works for me. And for that reason, I would definitely recommend these 2 books. Now, what I learned real quick. So I found this from an interview on a random blog. So who knows if it's been verified or not, actually. But from what I found, there is going to be a 3rd book in the Sworn Soldier series in which Easton will be traveling to America to reunite with Dr. James Denton from What Moves the Dead. And then T. Kingfisher says, I've researched so much about coal mining in the 1800s for book 3. So much. You would not believe how many different ways there are to die in a historical coal mine. Just so many ways. And then Hall, who I believe is the editor, says there is something horrifying and inexplicable happening to Denton, and Easton is the only hope. I can't wait. So, let me see if I can find something else real quick that maybe... Okay, so I can't find anything other than that one thing and another blog. So the one blog, I'll put the link down below so you can take a look at it. So, who knows what's going to happen? If we follow the trend, there'll be another book in 2026, not 2025. But do we need one? Not really. But would I read a Monster of the Week style series with Easton? Yeah, probably, because I like this character, I like this world, and I really like T. Kingfisher. I will probably read nearly every book T. Kingfisher puts out. I'm still working on catching up on her backlist. So, because some of the like romantasy ones, they're not as like my thing. So I'm a little slower on them. But that's What Feasts at Night and What Moves the Dead. The Sworn Soldier duology, yes, I think you should read them, especially, this is my year of novellas, and I'm going to be just recommending novellas this year. So if you have a good one you want me to read, let me know, and I will see if I can pick it up. I have a cold. I'm going to go. I'll see you soon.